So funnily, as a business owner, right? Of course, you can have a team who does the other channels of marketing.
Right.
Funnily for me, once I did networking, I don't know any other way to generate it or
Okay.
that kind of revenue. So for me, the ROI is very, very high. It's not just in terms of dollars or money value, but just what is going on in my company because of what I'm doing in networking.
Right.
So when people talk to me and they realize they treat me like a reputed company, which is very difficult to establish without spending a lot of money on maybe PR or getting into magazines where people start looking at you as a credible business owner.
Right.
When you form relationships in marketing or networking, people automatically start spreading your story about you being a credible business owner, which is very difficult to achieve otherwise.
Welcome, Kunal. So, Kunal, more than business, I remember him, I know him as a spinner. So we will spin some stories today during our podcast. So Kunal, I know for I think like almost 6 years. Amazing inspirational story for me as a businessman. I look up to, and we have a lot of conversations, right? And quite interestingly, one of the conversations we had was around health. So I just saw Atomic Habits just as a prop, just happened to be here. We speak a lot on those. So yeah, so welcome, Kunal.
Thank you.
It is great to have you here. Just a quick one. Kunal. Besides running his own business, AAB Industries, he also is the area director for Central Dubai for BNI. So before I say anything more, Kunal, welcome, and maybe say something about yourself.
Thank you, Lijo. Of course, we have a lot of conversations about a lot of things. So for me, the journey has been quite amazing here in Dubai in general, right? I run my own business. It's called AAB Industries. We are into manufacturing of different kinds of packaging material, which we supply to other industries. So it's more of a B2B. And other than that, of course, I am the area director at BNI Central Dubai, which allows me to manage about 9 chapters now, which are in Central Dubai. We're about 500 members. So manage their BNI journey and make sure it's enriching as mine has been. That's pretty much what I do on a daily basis. That's me.
Great. So just so that listeners know that this is not a BNI podcast. There's a huge amount of BNI podcast. This is more about networking and how to use it as a marketing tool.
Absolutely.
Because there's so much in networking as it stands today. And so from a marketing perspective, right, how does networking stand as like a business owner consider networking as part of it?
So funnily, I stumbled upon it. It was not a planned strategy for me that I will use networking to help my business. But the minute I started networking, I suddenly realized how it can add to your brand perception, how it adds to who you are as a businessman, what does your company do, or how different people perceive you or your business. The minute you start networking, you get to know a lot more people and a lot more people get to know you.
Right.
And then they tell 10 other people. So if word of mouth marketing is the largest way to do marketing, which I think it is, other than digital, of course, networking is the only way your stories can reach people. Because you look at other forms of marketing and you realize that this is the most authentic form because they've heard the story from you. Exactly. Not from somebody else, not from a newspaper, not from an article you've posted, but you yourself. And that really helps what they perceive you as a brand or a company.
So, networking is as just another tool. Is there an shortcut to networking? Does it give it immediate results? So that's one big thing, right? So because when I joined BNI and one of the big things was like the first year or so, right? Or for that matter, anybody who's into networking, because one of the biggest challenges I face in the corporate life, and this is something that I feel should be taught in corporate of networking, right? Which we don't do in corporate. So what should be the strategy as a business owner in making sure that the networking actually works for him or her?
So this is going to sound very bookish, but the idea is to not be comfortable when you're networking. So the minute you feel like, oh, I can do this, I'm doing well, is when you need to change something about it. Right. So a lot of people go to networking events, they meet 4 or 5 people, they have dinner and they leave.
Right.
Or they'll exchange a few cards without even having a conversation. And they'll actually just leave and feel like that was a network well spent, an evening well spent networking.
Right.
Funnily, the actual work begins after. So networking is not just about meeting people. It's about how you make those meetings into relationships or business later. So let's say I've come to an evening of networking. You recently had one. You went, you met some great people, had some great conversations. How many people will actually remember you post that
Yeah.
particular evening? They were there, they were in a calm mood, they had great conversations. But to follow up on that and actually make it work is where the ROI is. It's actually like exhibiting at an exhibition. You meet 2,000 people, you think your sales are going to go through the roof, but the real thing will happen only if you follow up well.
Right.
And that's what this is. So if I have 5 meaningful conversations, that's worth more than meeting 100 people and exchanging cards for me. And actually, it can be tracked if you wish to do that. So
Right.
I had learned this at one of the trainings that we attend, where when you go networking and let's say you give me your cards and we have a good conversation, I should actually take 20 seconds out and write behind the card where I met you and what I met you for.
Interesting.
Because 6 months down the line, when that card comes out of my pocket, I have no idea who Lijo is. Till I turn it around and I'm like, oh, I met him 6 months back and I was supposed to do this and I didn't.
Right.
So you start writing what you met someone for and come back with 10 cards. You'll follow it up the next week. You can actually track your ROI or what you did well that particular event. And then it'll also show you which events work well for you. So let's say an industry specific event might work well for somebody or
sure.
a generic event might work well for somebody. So when you start tracking how many good conversations that potentially led to business and other areas that you were trying to achieve worked well.
Yeah. So I think it kind of boils back to the basic marketing principle. Like until unless you work on your awareness and visibility, you cannot and make your credibility and make sure that till you start getting conversions. And be where the audience is rather than the other way around where you go to 10 different places where the audience is not there or even the interest of trying to help each other. So that brings me to the question, what's the ROI? Like what amount of my effort should I as like a marketing, because it's very intangible in the sense that there is no clear measurement per se, and it's a human to human relationship.
Yeah.
As networking as a tool, like what amount of time or what percentage of my time should I spend in networking?
So funnily, as a business owner, right? Of course, you can have a team who does the other channels of marketing.
Right.
Funnily for me, once I did networking, I don't know any other way to generate it or that kind of revenue. So for me, the ROI is very, very high. It's not just in terms of dollars or money value, but just what is going on in my company because of what I'm doing in networking.
Right.
So when people talk to me and they realize they treat me like a reputed company, which is very difficult to establish without spending a lot of money on maybe PR or getting into magazines where people start looking at you as a credible business owner.
Right.
When you form relationships in marketing or networking, people automatically start spreading your story about you being a credible business owner, which is very difficult to achieve otherwise. And funnily, the one thing that actually BNI only taught me, though this is not a BNI podcast, is when you focus on helping others in networking is when your perception will change. So the more I try to add value to other people, right? You are a leader in digital marketing. Somebody I think knows more than most people do. If I don't follow up or add value to the client that I'm getting, I'm not going to close anybody.
Correct.
So again, the ROI that I get from digital marketing, to measure it is just as simple because you can see leads, you can convert them. Same as with networking. The minute I get leads and I try to add value, I talk about how I can help them, is when they start taking me seriously.
Right.
And my ROI goes up.
So very direct questions kind of a thing. And I think what we spoke about could be, as you said, bookish or theoretical kind of a concepts, right? Any case study that comes to your mind that is like stands out? Maybe you don't need to take names or something like, but anything that comes to your mind.
Funnily, I have quite a few. I'll start with the largest one. There was this one organization that I was really trying to get in touch with. I used to go to their website and write them one email every day.
Interesting.
This I did for close to, I think, 400 or 500 days. No response. I met someone in a networking event and they said, are you trying to connect to them? I said, yes. And he knew somebody, it is a group company, so he knew somebody handling strategy for them.
Right.
So he just shot one email to this friend of his, marking me saying, can you help him connect with the right team? Now that person wrote one email to the procurement department of that company.
Okay.
They called me the next day.
Wow.
They called me, said, come meet us tomorrow. I gave them my products. They didn't even negotiate with me on the price.
Wow.
I told them, I actually told them, I said, I've been trying to connect you. connect to you for 500 days. I've written 500 emails. They're like, nobody looks at those emails.
Yeah.
They were very honest. It's been 9 years now. I've been doing business with them and I haven't looked back. They're one of my top clients. This is one. If I look at another story, another group company, funnily, somebody knew the owner there. The owner wrote one email to the procurement team. They connected me. Now, the new trend in the market is these large groups are started to do online auctions for my industry. The person who was doing the auction told me, I also have an auction for another large group. Do you want to supply to them as well? I said, absolutely.
Yeah.
So because I won the first auction, that company took me to another one. But I couldn't have reached either of them had I not met this person at a networking event.
Interesting.
So suddenly now I'm working with two large groups in the region which don't do small business by any stretch of the imagination and who people would die to connect to by just going to one event.
Now I visualize something else while we're talking about it, because it's kind of an informal. So is networking a very formal jacket kind of dinner kind of, or is it a very formal structure, or can networking happen anywhere and everywhere? Because I know you golf a lot. Does networking, is it very formal kind of an approach, or is it something more than that?
Of course, the world has put a very, very formal jacket on networking where you go to an event. You got to go to a networking event to network. I don't believe that any such thing exists, right? Every conversation with someone is networking. You're forming a perception either about themselves or about you. So I think marketing and networking are synonymous for me at a level where if I'm talking to someone, I'm also thinking about who else can I connect them to? Can I add value to this particular client of mine by giving them a good supplier? If my client is struggling with somebody which is not even related to my industry, and if I can get someone else there who's good at it, it automatically adds value to me and to the other person and to my client. So everything I do, right from golfing, even if I'm golfing with somebody who I've never met and I ask them what do they do in their business, you get into a conversation where you reach a place where I ask them, how can I help you? And they will come up with a problem and you solved it. And that's it. Then they will call you for everything. So I think everything you do daily, every time people are involved, it's networking. You don't have to go to a formal event. That is one form of networking.
So one of the biggest challenges, things that I keep telling for my clients for whom I work for on LinkedIn, I said, stop selling, right? People really don't like anybody selling to you. Now, is networking a kind of a channel through which you sell more, or is it a channel that you think that is a value, like keep adding value kind of a channel?
To be very honest, everyone starts networking thinking how I can sell.
Correct.
It's everybody without exception. When you go to an event, you are thinking about how can I get maximum revenue or value from this.
Right.
Slowly, when you do it enough, you start realizing that actually this is a very old school methodology. You're actually doing cold calls in person, if you think about it. If you're only selling. The idea is to build a relationship so that when you think business opportunity arises, they can only think of you. So technically, networking is more to develop a top of mind awareness in the minds of larger audiences. So if everyone thinks of me when they think about packaging, my job is done. Then if my price is wrong, I'm not going to sell anyways.
Correct.
But when they think packaging, who should they think of? Me. And that's what I'm doing face to face. There are other tools which you handle very well, which is digital marketing, of course. There is also PR, there is social media, all of that. But when I'm meeting them, they should not feel like he's coming to sell to me. Otherwise, it's no better than someone calling you to sell a credit card to you. What do you do with those calls? Some people are polite and tell them I'm not interested. Others pretty much hang up. Right? The minute they realize you're here for yourself, game over. So the idea is to not take the conversation to sales till you actually have a relationship. That's how I approach it, to be honest. So for me, it's a relationship building exercise. Earlier, it was sales. So it starts off like that, but you got to mature into a more refined approach where you first add value to them and they will add value to you later.
So in marketing, we have this thing called campaign and always on, right? So where campaign is like, let's say, a very specific time, 2 months, 3 months. So of course, networking cannot be a campaign, right? But as a person who has been in the forefront of networking for 12, 13 years, and and you have in as many forums said that this networking has helped you a lot, right? Is it an always on? Do you at any given point of time take a step back and say, okay, I'm like there's that incremental value that I get out of networking is diminishing in the last mile? Or is it something that like till you're running a business or you're CEO or so it doesn't matter who you are, you continue doing?
So I do think it's a continuous process. Uh, the kind of people you surround yourself with need to change.
Right.
It definitely needs to change. Like, I think every business goes through a set of life cycle. When you're at one stage, the kind of support you need is very different to when you're at a different stage in business. So when you start up and you're just beginning your business, the kind of things and the kind of experiences you need are very different to once you're on top of 100 people organization doing millions of dollars worth of business. Your challenges are different.
Right.
You might not even be looking at these challenges. They still exist, but it's somebody else who's looking at it. So definitely your room needs to keep changing. Doesn't mean you stop networking. Like every network will add different things to you. What will be the most valuable to you at that point in your business cycle, only you can decide. So for me, a particular network organization might work when I'm starting off. Then when I've matured and I'm no longer looking for, let's say, sales, a different kind of organization is needed. Then if my mindset is more about learning, a different organization is needed. Or if everything is needed, then you probably need to network everywhere. But then how much time do you have time for yourself?
Absolutely.
So,
And it's
gotta choose that.
interesting. You say that I'm suddenly like when you launch a product, there is a product life cycle, right? Early stage, then product matures and kind of a thing. So maybe there is something that people need to be aware of. And I think very early stage where people need to be educated, because I was not. Now it's quite an insight for me. Okay, and I can visualize myself at different stages requiring different kinds of inputs to or help or support that kind of changing the room, the kind of people I interact with, kind of a thing. So I have personally seen a huge benefit for me in terms of networking. That's and I use it as a very, very strong personal branding kind of a platform where again it's about just farming rather than hunting. I guess that's a big learning that I keep repeating to myself, and tremendous learning from you, Kunal, right today on how to use it, and immense case study. So thank you a lot, Kunal.
Thank you, Lijo. Thank you for having me.
So Kunal is there on LinkedIn. He's very shy on all platforms.
Yeah. I don't post much. I only repost.
Yeah, he only reposts. So you don't expect. So if you can DM him, if you want any support from him, he will not DM you ever. So that's one drawback.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'll work with Kunal someday and take him out of that shell. Because in private, he's an amazing conversationalist. He's never short of words. So it's quite interesting how his digital platforms do not reflect that. So thank you once again.
Thank you so much for having me, Lijo.
And I'm sure that listeners will find value.
I'm sure it did. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.